still getting a little bit used to this. I'm live. Oh, it's saying I'm live now. Right. Still getting a little bit used to this system, but it's 9 o'clock UK time, so it's a little bit of a. Usually, I do this in the early hours of the morning, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any more or less responses. Um, if you're online, if you want to interact, please say hello. Let me know that you're here. Let me know where you're from. If you're watching from here in the UK, in the United States, wherever. I have subscribers from all over the world, from Brazil, from India, from Japan. I've seen subscribers from all over the place. Cameron Ashrington, hello, I'm a fan of your videos. You make a lot of good points. I'm from Yorkshire. Well, thanks, Cameron. I appreciate that. I always like to see positive feedback. Um, so, whereabouts in Yorkshire are you from? North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire? Are you from one of the big cities or from a smaller place? By the way, people don't feel the need to reply. I'm just like, it's just to keep the flow going. Leeds, yeah, I know Leeds quite well. I've been there many times. I live in Sunderland myself, as you probably know, so it's not too far away. When I worked for my local university as social assistant at the international department, we went to Leeds a few times. I've always liked Leeds. I don't know everyone does, but I like the place. Maybe I just like big cities. But anyway, um, if you're in the UK, you'll know that Johnson has announced new restrictions. I'll be quite honest, I didn't see the whole speech. So I'm still not entirely sure what this entails, if the rule of six is still in place. For international viewers, if anyone's online, we're in a very bad way with COVID, and the Prime Minister, as well as devolved representatives in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, have had to make some new announcements. Yeah, it does make you wonder when this thing is ever going to end. It will at some point, whether it from a vaccine, whether it naturally runs its course, it will end. But for me, I'm honestly not so worried about the virus. I'm not a virus denier, but I'm more worried about the mental health side of this. Not so much for myself, but I am concerned for vulnerable people. Maybe people living in tower block, people living with their family in a relatively enclosed place. Um, to say we're all in it together negates the fact that we're really not. Now, I don't want to be too hard on the government. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Cameron. I saw a bit of it, but not all of it. Here's the thing. I don't want to be too hard on the government because I do think they're under exceptional pressure. And I don't think any government can get this absolutely right, although certainly we wouldn't be among the better performing governments. But I would say that some of the messages seem to be contradictory. I mean, for example, you can gather at a pub close to 10 p.m. There's a lot of people in a pub, yet you cannot meet your family members in another house, even if it's a case of parents meeting their son or daughter. That doesn't make sense because ostensibly there's more people in a pub. Now, maybe it's because the virus is more likely to spread among families. I don't know. But I mean, my parents were going to come down from Scotland a few days ago. They had to cancel that. They don't want to get a fine. I have a friend who sometimes comes here to watch films, and he's in two minds whether he should come or not, whether he'd be breaking the rules because it's from another household, even though he's just one person. So I don't know if that comes under the rule of six or not. I.e., my friend is obviously one person, but he's from another household. So in fact, maybe if someone's watching this, they can clarify that because we're not entirely sure. Um, honestly, I think one thing that has to change out of all of this, and I'm concerned that it's already going on the back footing, is our relations with China. When all is said and done, we must never ever forget that it was the Chinese government that initially lied about this. Now, I'm not saying that they're responsible for the policies that every government takes, but I'll just put my cards on the table. I have contempt for the Chinese regime. I know it. I know what it's capable of, and What I mean by that is it's cover up. It makes me very angry. I don't think we should have relations of as normal with China until they accept responsibility for COVID. Right now, all they're doing is boasting about their success rate, which is dubious anyway. My main concern regarding COVID for me is, will we have another national lockdown? Yeah, that's definitely a concern as well. That would be problematic for a lot of reasons. It would be devastating for the economy, for mental health. Unfortunately, it is a cycle. If deaths rise, the government may eventually have no choice. I think Spain has done it. I'm not sure. I don't want to say that because I remember what the national lockdown was like in the early days. It was like going through my local shopping centre. It was like being in a zombie film. It was very unsettling. I didn't like it. Um, I think the current restrictions, in terms of washing our hands as we go into shops and stuff, is probably sufficient. I think the Prime Minister is going to be very, very reluctant to go into a second lockdown. He was reluctant to go into the first one, um, but it may well end up that way. Um, I can understand the government's concern about the economic side of things, and obviously the pub industry, the hospitality industry, will be hard hit in any such recession. So will everywhere. I think the Chancellor should reintroduce the. Well, no, I was going to say should reintroduce the eat out to help out scheme, but of course that was when the lockdown eased, and it was a way to boost the economy again. What I'm thinking of actually is the Spanish influenza, the 1918 pandemic, became very deadly in the second wave. And although it technically lasted in the 1920, I understand most of the deaths were in the second half of 1918. And it was catastrophic. I mean, at least 50 million deaths worldwide. We're well off that. I mean, COVID has claimed about 1 million lives. That's about the same toll as the 1968 Hong Kong flu, which has largely been forgotten today, but it actually claimed as many lives as COVID. So I hope we don't have another national lockdown, but it may well happen. I think the concern is, of course, getting into winter, that flu season. So I was watching an interview with a vampire last night. Has anyone seen that film? I've only got two people online. I don't know if one of those people is meant to be me or not. The little person logo. I don't know if that's yourself, Cameron, and me, or if is there someone else there? Feel free to say hello if you're there. Honestly, with these live streams, I've no um yeah, interview with the vampire. With this vampire, everyone calls it vamp vampire. I definitely recommend it. It's based on I was just looking over there if I had the DVD. It's based on the Anne Rice novels. I must admit I haven't read her novels, but the film basically, without giving too much away, is set in modern day San Francisco. Young journalist interviews a man who calls himself a vampire. He's skeptical at first, but then this man, Brad Pitt, goes on to the young man, by the way, is played by Christian Slater, but he goes on to give an account of his life, starting from colonial era Louisiana right up to the present time, and how he met Stat by Tom Cruise. I mean, to have a film with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt in one film. Um, the casting of Tom Cruise apparently was not popular with the author, but she later came to accept his portrayal because it was widely hailed. It's a very good film. I mean, it's very memorable. It has a lot of the gothic tropes that Twilight, for example, doesn't have. So it has a lot of the sort of has coffins, it has capes, it has all that sort of thing. But there are also sides to it that are very original. So Kirsten Dunst is also in it, young Kirsten Dunst. I'd definitely give it a chance. It's a good movie. 1994, so it's 26 years old now, but it's timeless. Definitely worth checking out. Tonight, I might watch Citizen Kane. Never seen it before, and I'm a big movie fan. I've got about 1,000 films, so Theory of Everything. Yes, I watched that recently as well. I mean, I really do have a big film collection, about 1,000 films. I actually preferred The Theory of Everything to A Beautiful Mind because I thought Redmayne was amazing as Stephen Hawking. I thought it was a very human portrayal. It was it managed to temper his sense of humor with the serious subject matter of the film. But I feel it was a very sure it was about physics, but it was a very human film as well. Very much about his life and his family, and yeah, I thought it was well worthy of its praise. I liked it, and I thought Eddie Redmayne well deserved that Oscar. There's another Eddie Redmayne film I want to watch called Savage Grace. It's not a well-known film. I think it's like an art house film, but basically it's a true story about this young man who had a very complicated relationship with his socialite mother, Barbara Bakeland, in London in the early 70s. They were American, but they lived in London, and it was a semi-incestuous relationship, but he ended up murdering his mother. So it's it sounds like an intriguing drama. Um, Definitely one to watch. Also stars Julianne Moore. Another performance by Eddie Redmayne, of course. And I've got this one as well. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I think I first saw Eddie Redmayne in Elizabeth the Golden Age, where he played a secondary role, supporting role. Who's your favorite actor, Cameron? Do you have a favorite actor or anyone else watching this? For me, it's unquestionably Leonardo DiCaprio, and I'll give my reasons for that in a minute. But let me know if you guys have a favorite actor or actress. Just a heads up, I may not make this one too long because there's some I want to tidy up a bit with various work. Um, Eddie Redmayne or Sandra Bullock. Um, I thought she was very good in Speed. I love that film. I must admit, I haven't seen many Sandra Bullock films. I mean, obviously, I know her, but Miscongeniality and Speed are the two films that come to mind when I think of Sandra Bullock. But I know in more recent years she's taken quite art house kind of serious roles. Um, so honestly, I think I need to see more of her performances. But I thought Speed was a good action thriller. Like I say, with these live streams, I'm not going to time them. I'm just going because I think if I put a set time, I'd have to obviously be loyal to that time, and my sleeping structure's all over the place right now. Um, yeah, I'm not. There's no real set subject with this. I was just thinking of COVID and I'm sick of it. But I think a lot of people are. Have you heard Jeremy Kyle is supposed to be making a TV return? I hate that man just as much as you do. He's a nasty piece of work and a bully. Totally agree. Yeah, I've heard this. I've heard that ITV wants to bring him back in some capacity. The good news is it will never be in the format of that six show again. The bad news is Kyle is basically being rewarded for nothing, for his ratings. Unfortunately, I do think that there is a segment of the population that is very cynical, that admires bullies, that admires that sort of garbage, quite frankly. Um, ITV's pathetic defense of him was Jeremy's still popular and we can find a place for him. What really angered me about that whole situation, I should say my local MP, Julie Elliott, was on the parliamentary committee looking into that. Um, and she's done a good job giving the producers of ITV a grilling on their code of conduct. Of course, Kyle himself didn't show his face, which I think is despicable. You know, this is a man who made his career out of exploiting and shaming other people. And granted, some of them were pretty obnoxious, but this is a man who would literally stand up on stage and boast about how great a father he was and all the rest of it. Um, and yet, when the pressure comes to him, he runs away, literally. You know, he avoided the cameras, he avoided parliamentary scrutiny. I think there should have been some sort of legal thing whereby he had to. Otherwise, he would have faced legal consequences. Despicable. Absolutely despicable. I mean, what bothers me is the ignorance of Jeremy Kyle fans. They say things like, "Oh, these people are going on of their own accord," but they're failing to recognize a lot of these people are vulnerable people. They have limited education. It's so easy for, very suave producers to coerce someone into that. So, in my opinion, it's pure exploitation. Um, I've always said about Jeremy Kyle, with the guests, they either need counseling, professional help, or they need, if they've committed crimes, sentencing. What did Kyle do? He turned them into entertainment. And it's far worse than Jerry Springer because these were real lives. I think it's disgusting. But the good news is that the show itself is gone forever. I don't think they can find any ground to bring that back. But unfortunately, they'll try and find a place for Kyle. No, that's okay, Cameron. I like people to interact. I'm very open. I mean, I'm prepared to address anything. Sorry for going off topic with all of this. I've been watching your videos for some time. I just want to get to know you a little bit. Well, I'm prepared to be pretty open. I mean, my videos tend to not be that personal just because I find it more interesting to talk about topical issues. But certainly, I'm prepared to give some information about myself. I mean, feel free to ask anything. I live in Sunderland. I'm 35. I was originally born in Northern Ireland in Belfast. Um, I taught in China twice. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other things I could say, but I just find when I make this video subject matter, I talk about something I feel that's topical at the time. I think my last video was actually a review on Twilight. Um, it's almost embarrassing for a straight 35-year-old man to admit that, but I like the Twilight series. It's very different from Interview with the Vampire, but it was a fun series. So my last video was on that. So occasionally I'll do videos on the arts, but most of them are about socio-political issues. So anyone else logging in, feel free to ask me anything. Hey Declan, uh, good to see you. I mean, good to see your comment technically. Well, Cameron, I always say I'm Northern Irish. I'm not Irish. I'm British, to be honest. I'm a Rubik's Cube speed solver. Been doing it for 4 years now. I also like movies too. Horror is my favorite genre. Get on well with my friend. He loves thrillers and horrors. So that's yeah, I like the horror genre, but probably wouldn't be my go-to. Having said that, tonight I'm going to watch one of the old Hammer horrors. Yeah, my accent is probably still quite pronounced. People still notice it even after 18 years. Um, with a Northern Irish accent, there's sort of two main accent groupings between Belfast and rural Ulster. And then the whole island of Ireland is probably about five, I reckon. I personally prefer other Irish accents to mine. Um, I mean, honestly, guys, I don't really have any set subject. What I do with these live streams is just try to get an interaction going. Probably a good way is if you guys ask me questions because I don't have any planned subject matter, so to speak. Like I say, tonight I might watch Citizen Kane with Orson Welles. Never seen it before, and it's often, deemed one of the greatest films ever made. Sometimes I watch really what's the word, prestigious films, and I mean when I sometimes it takes time, particularly with old films. When I was first, excuse me, when I first watched Casablanca, I wasn't overly impressed. I thought, what's a big fuss? Then I watched it again, and I could start to see the angles that people took. It's got some very memorable one-liners, and it's very well made. Saw your message on Joe Biden. I definitely think he needs to be a lot more outspoken on China and law and order. And I do notice he's suffering serious congestive decline from his age. Yeah, that's one of my major concerns about Biden. I've never equivocated. I am not a fan of Trump. I think Trump is just, I can't begin to say how unstatesmanlike and how unpresidential I think Trump is. I could talk all day about my issues with Donald Trump, but just focusing on Joe Biden because the polls are suggesting he will win. Um, I am concerned about, excuse me, slight hiccups here. I am concerned about Biden's age. I am concerned that sometimes it shows. Now, if his age didn't show, I would say, well, you could get healthy 77-year-olds. But the problem is he does sometimes slur his words, and that could be serious in that job. Having said that, I'm currently reading the Reagan diaries. Now, Ronald Reagan was a lot younger than Joe Biden, yet in his diaries, there's a lot of spelling mistakes. There's a lot of sloppy grammar. So whether that was early signs of his Alzheimer's or not, I don't know. Um, I think generally, particularly in the United States, leadership is getting older. If we consider the Democratic primaries, there was Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and then Trump himself, all septuagenarians. I think that says something about, I remember when Bob Dole ran, he was, I believe, 71 or 72, and he was an old man. Now it's almost normal. I do think with Biden, he needs to be a lot more outspoken on China. We need leadership from the United States. In fact, we need leadership from all Five Eyes nations and all Western nations. I believe we really, really need to be assertive about the Chinese regime right now. So I'd like Biden to be a lot more vocal on that, not just in terms of China and the West, but in terms of human rights issues, the weaker concentration camps, a whole range of other things. And law and order. I know that Biden's condemned the rioting as he should, but I do think that's going to be Trump's big attack point because where the unrest is happening tends to be Democrat cities. So the Biden camp's going to really need to be prepared for this because I think in the debates, Trump will bring that up. So Biden needs to be unequivocal in his condemnation of rioters. And frankly, I think he needs to distance himself from Black Lives Matter. I think as an organization, they're trouble. I don't believe they're just a civil rights organization. So if I were the Biden camp, I'd be distancing myself from that. I mean, there was something in the 1992 election called the Sister Soldier moment, apparently, when Bill Clinton was running. There were similar charges about the Democrats being soft on crime. Well, Sister Soldier, a rapper at that time, made a racist comment about white people. Bill Clinton unequivocally condemned her and said, if you replace the words, that could have come from the Ku Klux Klan. I'd like to see something similar from Joe Biden to condemn someone like Yusra Kagaly, who's a Toronto Black Lives Matter founder, very racist. So I do think there's areas that Biden is showing weakness, quite honestly. However, on a personal level, I think he is genuinely more compassionate than Trump and far more statesmanlike. But that's just my feeling. Be interesting to see what happens. Although all the indicators are that Biden is leading, strange things could happen. Trump could still win the electoral college. So, Cameron, you mentioned you want to get to know me anymore. So if you want to ask any more questions, feel free. Or if you guys want to raise any subject whatsoever, because the way I just want this to okay. I also saw your videos on depression. I can relate to you. I have clinical depression and psychosis. Actually, I have a friend who's been diagnosed with psychosis. So I developed it due to my physical illness, which is similar to multiple sclerosis. It sounds pretty challenging. I must admit, I don't know a great deal about it, but would it be fair to say that psychosis causes you a lot of anxiety? Because that's something that my friend has. Um, and he has been diagnosed with. I remember asking him, well, Christian, would you be diagnosed with anxiety? Is that actually a diagnosis? And he said, no, it's psychosis. So I just wonder, Cameron, do you suffer from anxiety? I don't really have any set schedule tonight. I usually, like I said, I'll probably watch Citizen Kane. I want to tidy up a bit as well. Well, one good thing about coronavirus, if I could say that, is it's given opportunities to do other things that wouldn't otherwise have time to do. Yeah, quite a lot. Is there any UK politicians you really hate? For me, one is Ian Duncan Smith. Well, certainly at the height of Tory austerity back in 2011, 2012, I did also have very strong views on IDS when he was working pension secretary. The thing about Ian Duncan Smith was I didn't have strong views on him as Tory leader. It might have been because at that time I wasn't that political. And he was always supposedly a Tory moderate. You know, he was known as the quiet man, but then he turned out to be a pretty ruthless um, work and pension secretary. The thing that really angered me, not just about IDS, but the Tories at that time, was their utter lack of concern at the impact the welfare policies were causing. I mean, when you had physically fit people, and Cameron, you might be able to relate to this. I don't know if you're on universal credit or if you've experienced this, but people who were, they did have serious medical ailments, yet they were getting threatening messages from the DWP saying they were fit to work. It was disgraceful. This caused a lot of anxiety and, in the worst case, of suicides. I think it was reprehensible. So at that time, I must admit, I was more bitter with the Tories then than now. Maybe just because now welfare isn't a vocal issue, and it's the way welfare is right now. I mean, certainly in my situation, you don't have any real commitments. There isn't the DWP breathing down your neck. You don't have to fill in a worksheet. So maybe I suppose I've calmed down a little bit in my anger against the Tory party. Although I can't, I think that, excuse me, I've got hiccups here. There we go. I think that that is definitely part of the legacy. Apparently, David Cameron's been volunteering in a food bank this summer. Well, maybe it's a guilty conscience. I think the Tory austerity was ideological, and I think it went far too deep. And I still believe, I'm not a socialist, but I do believe that the Conservative Party, like every party, there are decent people within it. I have Tory friends, there's Tories that I like, but I still believe as a party, they do look up to wealth, and they do think that if someone is struggling, it must be their own fault, like they're lazy or something. So I still think the Tories have a bad ideology when it comes to the most vulnerable in society. That's my gut feeling. Um, I was unable to work for almost 2 years due to my problems. I'm now finally working again. It was a tough decision to return to work. I don't want to let this define me. Well, that's really admirable, Cameron. Can I ask what's your job? What do you do? I mean, I'm semi-employed at the moment. I teach online, but it's so little that it can barely be called work. I'm also taking a course, which I'm going to have to do a bit on tonight, actually. Um, a course of freelance journalism, so I'm trying to keep busy. I remember that video you made on him. We were even were raging that video, and rightfully so. The Tories are bad when it comes to helping the poor and vulnerable. Yeah, I remember that too. I think it's from 2012, 2013. I'll be honest, I may edit the title if it had been less than diplomatic in the title, but I won't change the content, at least not the general way I felt at that time. I have eased up a bit, but I still wouldn't vote Tory. I still have enough misgivings not to vote for them. Um, CSR, CSR is that? I assume that's a sort of, is that a managerial position or anyway? Domino's Pizza. However, when I can, I have decided I'm going into therapy. I want to help others. Oh, you mean to be a therapist? Someone who's mental health issues, I think would be a great idea. Well, you sound like an empathetic person, so definitely, I think if someone's been through something, it's very important. So the only thing I would say is make sure that you are really in a fairly happy place yourself, because I remember when I was going through serious depression, I thought I was through it, and I thought about volunteering at the Samaritans, and they politely turned me down because they felt I was still depressed, and they were right, I was. So that's the only thing with getting into something like that. You need to be absolutely prepared yourself. I mean, in the case of the Samaritans, you have to have the willpower and patience to listen to other people, but maybe also put up with angry people, even personal insults and stuff that isn't. that you can't take personally. I'm so grateful I had my job at Morrison's. I got that in April. Yeah, I mean, my situation is I'm a little bit concerned work-wise, but honestly, I've been in this position for so long that it doesn't feel that different to before COVID. I feel frustrated because I apply for a lot of jobs and I never get feedback. So at the moment, I'm volunteering in Bernardo. That's another thing I'm doing. The reason is to try and get till experience so that I can apply for shops. I mean, they're certainly not my dream job, but just to get something on the TV. I must admit, I'm a bit frustrated about the whole thing, but sometimes I worry about it. I have thought about joining the Royal Navy, actually, or at least the reserve, Royal Navy Reserve. The reason being is I come from a semi-military family. My brother's an officer in the army. My younger brother, my dad served in the army in the UDR in Ulster, um, and I don't know. It's not for that. There's no pressure. I mean, it would be entirely my own choice, but I want to serve my country, and I've always felt a maritime feel. I don't know why. Maybe it was being born in Belfast, but I don't know. The idea is somewhat attractive. The only thing about the military, I would think very carefully about before doing it, because you really do give over a lot. And for me, it would be, I think it would be relatively easy to get into because the armed forces need, they need new people. I think the pay is steady pay. It's not wonderful, but steady. So those are the main reasons I'm sort of pondering on it. But it's certainly not something I would take lightly. There were times my brother wanted to quit the army, but he never did, and now he's a senior officer and he's younger than me. So I'm very proud of him. But he really has dedicated his life to that life. He done two tours of duty actually in Afghanistan and one in Iraq. Guys, so let us run to about 40 minutes because I do have a few things to do. I'm having major problems with my washing machine at the moment. Really damn nuisance. Um, Living on your own, you always need to be aware of these things. I've taken the vent out. A lot of filthy water came out. It was stinking. Um, I'm trying to put it on a spin to kind of clean itself, but I don't know. Mint, that's a good name. Up here in the northeast of England, mint actually means like something really good. Like you'll hear young people around Sunderland and Newcastle say, "Oh, that's mint." It means very, just really cool, something really good. Like that film was mint. It's quite a nice expression actually. I mean, I don't know. I've never thought about this before, but it's kind of like a 20s thing almost. Like a lickety splits. Oh, it's mint. It's I don't know. But that's good that I imagine because Norfolk's a predominantly rural county, the jobs market is somewhat different to what would be in a city like Sunderland. Um, how about Leeds, Cameron? Would you say the situation in Leeds is good for young people right now, or not so much? Because I find northern cities are generally affected by not that it was great before, but I think that particularly COVID is going to affect us. Sunderland's always been one of those places that gets a bit of a bad reputation, which is a pity. Sunderland has a lot of merits to it. We have a beach, we have Europe's largest air show, we have a wonderful civic museum. Um, yeah, I mean that's the thing. Apparently, old-fashioned machines actually lasted longer. I don't know how old my washing machine is, but when my mum got it, it was second hand. Hope I could visit Norfolk one day. Well, Declan, I've got a contact there if I ever do. I always like to have contacts when I travel around. Cameron, if I'm in Leeds again, maybe we can meet up. Who knows? Um, I think it's always useful to know people, even when I go to other countries. I like traveling, but Some of the loneliest points I've ever been was when I was in continental European cities by myself. It's not a good idea to go to a city like Paris or Rome by yourself because no matter how much you appreciate history, if you've got a romantic side as well, and I do, the whole time I was thinking, I just wish there was a woman beside me, or even some friends. I was fairly miserable, to be honest. Mm. So is Leeds in full lockdown then, or is it like a partial lockdown? Here in Sunderland, in fact, I can show you guys my local newspaper. We went back into lockdown last Friday. Sunderland Echo from a few days ago. Haven't even read that yet. I've got so many newspapers, I haven't read them all. But the thing is, in a country like Britain, we're not used to this way of life. I think the masks are still alien to a lot of people. I don't like them. I find them uncomfortable. But um, in Asian countries, people were used to wearing masks because of the air pollution. But um, I think that this will end. My guess is probably the first half of 2021. The word is on its brink of lockdown. I wouldn't be surprised. I know Sheffield is, Bolton and Greater Manchester is, and there's quite a lot of other authorities. The whole Birmingham is, for example. I think Liverpool is. So where my parents live is it's a bit like Norfolk. It's a semi-rural area, Dumfries and Galloway. So I don't think they've had a heavy lockdown. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Brexit muddies the waters a bit as well, because we're still going through this transition process, and I just think there is so many question marks about this country right now. Then, of course, the SNP is pushing for a possible other independence referendum. Uh, I just think this is such a challenging time for this country, and I think people crave a return to normality, away from referendums, away from COVID, just to return to normality on some level. I remember the London Olympics in 2012, and notwithstanding Tory austerity, there was a very feel good thing around those Olympics. I thought the opening ceremony was fantastic. Um, so I do miss that. Um, I just hope we could get back to a semi normal situation. So, guys, I'm going to go fairly soon. If you want to ask any questions, feel free. Um, Thank you to whoever gave me the thumbs up. I mean, honestly, I'm not really doing much in these videos. They're not planned at all. Just totally spontaneous. Um, I'm going to try and do them at different times. I mean, probably my American viewers, it would be about lunchtime there for a lot of them. Um, I like to have international responses. Um, yeah, a lot of people have been saying that. Declan, I agree. I don't know what to make of that. I mean, I think we are definitely in a very uncertain time. I don't think people can honestly say that we're in a very confident state at the moment. I honestly think it's too early to know whether Brexit will be good or bad. So I'm not going to be too vocal on that because I just don't know. But I do think it has created a lot of uncertainty. And I think that I mean, okay, every country's facing COVID, but we have been hit particularly hard. To put this in context, we now have about the same number of deaths from coronavirus as the Blitz. In fact, we'll soon surpass that. About 43,000 people died in the Blitz from September 40 to May 41. So we're now in a similar. Cheers, Cameron. Appreciate that. Um, but there's just so many question marks. I think the last thing we need is another Scottish independence referendum. I mean, the idea of the country breaking up would break my heart. I'm British, so the United Kingdom is my country. That's how I feel about it, and I just don't want to see that happen. But who knows? I just want nothing more than a return to normality. Although I don't like the Tories particularly, I wouldn't welcome another general election anytime soon. You know, when you think about it, in the 2010s, we had four general elections, three referendums. People forget the third, the one on AV in 2011, or 2013, can't remember. And, you know, it was just a very, very uncertain time. Hopefully, another lockdown will not happen. I'm just concerned about the people who are not following the lockdown rules. They need to realize that if they do that, the virus will not go away. I had a colleague recently, and he actually said with a straight face that he felt it was all fake. I was so taken aback by it that I didn't even know what to say. But the guy's a bit of a conspiracy theorist, and it annoyed me. But I think my response was, well, what about the 41,000 dead? And he tried making a comparison with seasonal flu. And that's just ignorant because it's true that seasonal flu kills people every year, but they tend to be older people, whereas coronavirus has killed all age groups. Um, People can't underestimate this. I mean, I'm fed up with the restrictions, but it's a vicious cycle because the more people that ignore it, you know, people gathering together for parties or for anti-lockdown protests, it's a cycle. All they're doing is spreading it. I do think it was a mistake in summer for the Metropolitan Police to allow the Black Lives Matter protests to go ahead, because then, of course, all that done was give an invitation to other protests, and naturally that would ostensibly be spreading the virus. So, God, what a year 2020 has been. I've this thing with time. You know, I can take any year, certainly in my lifetime, and consider the things that have happened in that year. And, you know, every year is eventful, but 2020 will be so, so defined by this thing. I think it's the most profound event of my lifetime in terms of its impact around the world. I mean, September 11th was a huge event. It, you know, deeply impacted aviation, and those were images that haunted a generation. But and the 2004 Asian tsunami, you know, devastating impact, one of the biggest natural disasters ever. The Arab Spring. These are all big, big events in my lifetime, but nothing like coronavirus. Okay, guys, I'll give it to 45 minutes. For the last few minutes, just if you have any questions. Um, Cameron, I think you were talking about horror films. Do you like the old Hammer films, or do you prefer modern horror? For example, you know the old Hammer productions. It's a British studio in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, it definitely will. I mean, the problem is, I don't know how much will change though, because in China, they're already not really, for example, at the time they were going to get rid of those wet markets, but that hasn't really happened, um, which is infuriating. You know, the arrogance of the Chinese government, and also of Chinese wildlife traders, stubbornness that they cannot see that not just the welfare issues, but the hygiene issues as well. But in other areas, I think it will definitely make us reassess how we look at diseases. My younger sister has severe allergies, and maybe this will make people more empathetic to washing hands. Do I ever watch soaps like EastEnders? Not really. I do like the intro tune to EastEnders, I must admit. Um, you know, anyone can fall in love. I think it's a good tune. I used to watch a little bit of Brookside, but I would never say I was a hardcore fan. I just like the intro tune. But no, well, that's EastEnders. Yeah, I'm thinking of Brookside. I was like more of a modern horror person. Philip's like The Conjuring, Annabelle. I've heard good things about The Conjuring. Um, Poltergeist I haven't seen. The Exorcist I think is a genuinely scary film. I had to turn it off when I first saw it. Like literally. Modern horrors. Have you seen Orphan? That's genuinely creepy film about a young girl that is adopted by an American couple or at least they think she's like just I won't give it away, but there's more to her than it seems. Uh, what else do we have? The What's it called? The Exorcism of Emily Rose. That's quite good. It's based on an actual case from Germany, a girl called Anneliese Michel. Um, Doctor Who spin-offs like the Sarah Jane Adventures. It was amazing. I'm not a massive Doctor Who fan, but there's things about Doctor Who I like. I love the different. I mean, I can't get into the stories. Wouldn't know enough about Doctor Who to know the stories, but I still remember classic Doctor Who like John Pertwee, Tom Baker. I love those kind of slightly creepy orbital intros. I loved the old BBC monsters, even though they were very low quality. There was something about them, almost despite the low quality, that was captivating, like the Silurians and John Pertwee in the John Pertwee era, Sea People, things like that. I remember renting books from my library in. I used to live in a village called Bush Mills, and I would sometimes rent Doctor Who books from the library there. So I got quite into it. But I never knew the stories very well. Um, yeah, but I would say Doctor Who's definitely become an integral part of British culture. Wish I had a TARDIS in my local shopping centre a few years ago. Well, it wasn't really a TARDIS; it was a police box. But of course, it looked like the TARDIS. So that was quite something. So, Declan, who's your favourite Doctor Who? Which actor? Not sure if I have a favourite, but I haven't heard of those two, but I've heard of the. Let me think. I know probably more of the monsters from the classic era, like the Silurians, the Sea Peoples, the Cybermen, the Daleks, of course. Something related to Doctor Who, I strongly recommend if you haven't seen it, An Adventure in Time and Space. That was wonderful. It was basically about the making of Doctor Who. It was a superb production. It was about the whole. It was quite unconventional at the time because it was a young woman and an Indian guy, which by 1960 standards was a little bit out there. But it was really. I strongly recommend it. You might be able to find it on YouTube. It's called An Adventure in Time and Space, and it stars. The actress is what's her name should come to be in a minute. Damn, can't remember her name. But she was also in something called Jericho, which I also recommend. It's been called Britain's first Western because it's about the building of the Ribble Viaduct in Lancashire, actually Cumbria. Joshua, hi, just arrived. This is the first live stream I've managed to catch. I'm a big fan of your channel. Well, thanks a lot, Joshua. I was going to round this up, to be honest, but I could give 5 more minutes. So, Joshua, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And Declan, check out that An Adventure in Time and Space. It's so well made. Just it's about the how the concept of Doctor Who came up, and I strongly recommend it. And I'm not even a particular Doctor Who fan. And Declan, who is your favorite Doctor Who? Joshua, where are you from? Are you from here in the UK or are you from another country? Birmingham. Okay. I know you guys have went back into lockdown again. We have in Sunderland as well. I've always liked Birmingham. I studied in Wolverhampton actually, so the land of Ozzy Osbourne. I was going to say the workshop of the world, but the land of Ozzy Osbourne will also suffice. Yeah, I love Birmingham. I thought about moving there at one point. I just think I think Birmingham, it's one of those places that gets overlooked by tourists, but really it needs more attention. The only thing with the think tank is the time I went there, the planetarium was all catered towards children, which I was a bit disappointed by. Because in Northern Ireland, there's a planetarium called the Armagh Planetarium, which was really amazing. But I visited the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham, which was great. Have you guys seen the film Ready Player One? It's actually it's set in Columbus, Ohio, but it's actually filmed in Birmingham, or a good bit of it was, as the architecture in Birmingham is a little bit like Columbus, although Birmingham's a bigger city. So, Joshua, do you have any questions? Because I'm just going to round this up fairly soon. I have a lot of things to do this evening, but I don't mind staying a few more minutes if you guys have any questions. I can hear my washing machine going off, so I hope it's worked this time. I had to put it on a dry spin. David Tennant was my favorite one. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of people say that. So, what is it with David Tennant? I mean, I know he's a great actor. I don't know if you saw his recent portrayal of the serial killer Dennis Nelson. What is it, if you were to advocate David Tennant, what would you say it was about him that made him such a good Doctor Who? I mean, I'm not a fan of the series, so what is it that you would describe? Was it his wit? Was it um, his quirky mannerisms? I mean, I've seen a few clips of from the Tennant era. So, what is it that you would advocate about David Tennant? I know in the 80s the series went down a bit because it was deemed to be pretty violent in the Colin Baker era. Uh, I always laugh at that thing where Perry sort of says several times, "Doctor, doctor, doctor," and Colin Baker's doctor goes, "You're a very inquisitive young lady," and he's very snarky and bad tempered compared to Peter Davison. Um, I'm not far from Chelmsley Wood. Won't give you my exact location. Don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of Chelmsley Wood. Don't worry, I'm not a spy. I don't want your exact location. I'm not a fan of Star Wars. I have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of Star Wars. However, I do have the original three films. I wouldn't say I'm a massive fan, but I appreciate the creativity. I'm a huge film fan anyway, so I have the first three films: New Hope, Return of the Jedi, and The Empire Strikes Back. What make is my washing machine? That's a good question. Um, I don't know actually. I think it's. I don't know. Right, you know what? I'm going to bring this in right now so you can see. I need to check it anyway. I've been putting it on a spin, see if that's worked. I emptied the little plug thing earlier, and a lot of filthy water came out. It's doesn't say, as you can see. There's no actual make on it, so I don't know. I don't know. It just gives a reference number C510 WN13, but I don't see any actual brand. Unusual. It is unusual. But this thing's been causing me a lot of nuisance. Um, so Joshua, I take it you're a fan of Star Wars. What's your favorite film, and what do you think of the old films compared to the new ones? I don't know what to do about this thing. As you can see, I'll show you guys. I've put it on spin, but it's still just stopping mid flow, and I don't know what to do. I think it's just done. New Hope. That's the first film. Yeah, well, I can appreciate why you would like that. I mean, it's very creative. I think for me, I get very invested in films that are to do with human stories, and for me, Star Wars is just a bit out there. I mean, it is what it is, and it's very good at what it is. But I could never really get emotionally invested in the same way as a historic epic like Titanic or Pompeii or something like that. Because I think something like Star Wars is good for escapism. In fact, you might even put me in the mood for watching it tonight, really randomly. Yeah, Declan, actually, my mum mentioned that today, and I'd done precisely that. I opened the filter, and a lot of filth came out, like literally black water. So I cleaned it a bit, but I don't know how much difference that has made. Another topic I forgot to mention was Chernobyl. I'm presuming you've heard of it. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I do know my history. You can give me any year without being braggadocious. and I know one event of that year. And I have a friend in Belarus, which was, although the disaster occurred in Ukraine, the fallout was over Belarus. Devastating, devastating thing. Um, I must admit, though, I haven't seen that many documentaries on Chernobyl. I've seen the famous sort of still images on the factories and so on that were just as they were in 1986. Another one, are you familiar with the Bhopal disaster in India? It occurred 2 years previously in 1984, and it killed instantly about, I think it was 8,000 people. So it was a massive disaster. Okay, guys, I'll give this a few more minutes, but I want to do some work on my course, read newspapers. Got so many newspapers, I've got a lot at once, so I need to read them. Um, Joshua, next time if you log in, I may have some questions about Birmingham. Yeah, well, here's one. I may as well, since you're here. I know a few years ago there was plans for Birmingham to get an underground system, like a transit system, but they were scrapped to take a place of extending the super tram. The reason I ask is because Birmingham, unless I'm mistaken, it's the largest European city without an underground transit system. So, what's the latest on that? Is Birmingham going to get an underground, or are they just expanding the super tram? Or the no, not the super tram, that's Sheffield. I'm thinking of the Midland Metro. Do you know Wolverhampton well, by the way? Have you been to Wolverhampton? Wolverhampton's a bit of a rough place, but it's got a very nice Saxon parish church for those who like history. I went to the university there, so notwithstanding, it gets a similar reputation to Sunderland, but I still like Wolverhampton and things about it I like. A long time since I've been there, about 10 years. So Joshua, I don't know if you're still here. If you know about my question, or may as well bring this up to the 1 hour mark. 3 minutes. Feel free to ask anything, guys, because like I say, I'm just letting this go with the flow. May as well show you. I've got a book here, very interesting. 1001 Days That Shaped the World. This one needs no introduction, of course. I was called 9/11, the images that haunted the generation. It covers all sorts of things. Here we have Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. If our Queen is still on the throne in just 2 years, she'll get a Platinum Jubilee, which would make her Europe's second or third longest serving monarch. Electric scooters. Yeah, I don't know much about electric scooters though. I know that it might be an idea. I use an electric scooter in China and it takes time to get used to, but they're obviously environmentally friendly and they're quite fun to use if you get a hang of them. The only thing about them is you need to be careful because when you press the little gear, it moves forward fast. I had a nasty accident in China actually because the school that I was at, it was the apartment was a fair bit from the school, so we always had to get taxis, and that just wasn't convenient. So um, basically, they lent me this electric scooter, and it took me a while to get used to it. A guy from Manchester was showing me how, but one day I accidentally pressed it and it surged forward and hit some motorbikes, and their alarms went off, and I was frankly shitting myself. I thought their owners would come out yelling. Basically, on the road, it was a rainy day. Thankfully, the traffic wasn't that busy, but I wasn't used to this thing, and I suddenly braked. I went flying off. It could have been very serious. Thankfully, my injuries were artificial. I had a sore rib for a long time. Declan, have I seen United '93? Yes, I've got it. I watched it recently. I've seen it many times, but it never fails to have its effect. It's a very if you other guys haven't seen United '93, it's a very hard hitting drama about United '93, the flights that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, on September 11th, and famously the passengers fought back. The director's a guy called Paul Greengrass, who also done dramas on the Northern Ireland Troubles, on Oma and on Bloody Sunday. And he's known for having a very hard hitting style. I think the effect of that film was the fact that he didn't use well known actors. They were all relatively unknown. So it gave a more of an authentic feel to it. But it really gave you the sense of what it must have been like when these desperate people realized that this was a suicide mission. Desperately sad, but I think, as a director, Greengrass is superb at getting the suspense. But you just get like everything about that film it might be the most intense film I've ever seen. I mean, World Trade Center is also a good film about 9/11, but it's more like a typical Hollywood film. With United 93, it's more like a real time documentary. There's a very creepy bit when they get the audio transmission from the cockpit and they listen closely, and it says, "Yes, we've got." I think it's the voice of Muhammad Atta. Very creepy, but a very powerful film. I'm going to get going now. It's lovely to speak to you, and this was a great live stream. Thanks a lot, Cameron. I appreciate that. Do you have any memories of 9/11, the day itself? Um, yes, I was in my local museum that day. It almost sounds like a cliche because everyone remembers where they were. I went to my local museum. I came back. It was on the news, and I really did think it was a film. So did my sister. She said, "If I think she said something like, my younger sister said, have you seen this film, this action film about plane hitting the Twin Towers?" And I think I did dismiss it at first. I said, "Oh yeah, that's been done a million times." Then realized it was news. I will say this about 9/11. I was scared. I actually felt fear for the state of the world at that time, and it was a very surreal feeling. The first news event I remember is the death of Princess Diana, but 9/11 is the first news event I really, really thought about. Have you also seen films like Goodnight, Mr. Tom, of Mice and Men, and Boy in the Striped Pajamas? Yeah, I've seen all three. Goodnight, Mr. Tom, the dramatization, I think it was a TV film. Forget the actor. I think he was the actor from Morse. I forget his name now. John Faw, I believe. It was good. Of Mice and Men, there's different versions. I've got the one with Gary Sinise and John Malkovich. Boy in Striped Pajamas again, powerful film. Um, yeah, it's always one of those things. If they had have actually got the cockpit, if they'd restrained or even have killed the hijackers, I wonder what would have happened if they'd actually taken control of the plane. They would have, of course, been hailed as heroes and rightfully so. But I imagine there would have been some sort of bizarre legal case if they killed the hijackers. It's one of those what ifs, but sadly, it was never to be. Nevertheless, by taking over that plane the way they did, they may have saved hundreds of lives because it was going to crash into the White House, and there would have been a lot of staff and so on there. Although it had already been evacuated, so maybe not. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And this is going to be the format of all my live streams. I'll just ask questions, bring up random subjects. Take care, guys. And yeah, yeah, well, I certainly came close to that, getting into the Capitol building, although I believe it was evacuated at the time. What I always heard was they planned to fly into the Sears Tower, which would have been, of course, hundreds of thousands of casualties. Anyway, take care, guys. I'll see you next time.